Hey everyone, Ryan here, and welcome to my review of the LEGO Star Wars Set 75365 Yavin IV Rebel Base. It includes 1,066 pieces and costs $170. Now, for your money in this review, we're going to find out if you're getting a build that is a bit too simplistic, given that the age rating is 8+ on a $170 set. The build feels like it may have been held back here. But also for your money, you're getting a shocking amount of minifigs. 12 are included in this set. That is the most amount of minifigs in a non-UCS or MBS set since 2009's Battle of Endor, which also had 12. Now, this Yavin set exists for the first time 15 years after we saw a concept model, basically a canceled LEGO Star Wars set, in the very first LEGO Star Wars Visual Dictionary. It's something that captured the imaginations of many, and 2 years ago, I decided to build that model. The video ended up being pretty successful, and it just makes me wonder if it in some way inspired them to finally release a Yavin IV playset. Regardless of why it exists right now, I am very happy that they have finally made a Yavin IV playset. It felt so overdue. Now let's take a look at those 12 minifigs. Luke is my favorite minifigure in this set. They've used a softer yellow than they've used in years past for a celebration Luke, and I really like the way it turned out here. They also gave him a physical medallion piece instead of one printed on, so that you can actually remove this piece and have him just be normal Luke from the end of episode 4, and then you can recreate the ceremony and have Leia place the medallions on them. At least in a way, because I don't remember Luke's head popping off in episode 4. The same can be said for Han Solo with his medallion. I think he looks a little bit more awkward with the medallion, maybe because this outfit is one I'm more used to seeing without it, but still a nice figure and one I'm sure everyone will be happy to have. Princess Leia in this one is beautiful and also ready for a fight with a silver blaster. Her long hair and dress piece in lieu of legs is just gorgeous to me. I really love the way this figure looks, and you'll even find a little bit of a back print hidden underneath that hair. This is the exact same General Dodonna that we saw introduced in 2021. Still looks just as good as he did then, but he does now have his pointer stick accessory, which will fit into this set later. Garvin Dryce, or the Red Leader figure here, is pretty dope. He has the normal orange Rebel jumpsuit, looks nice, but the helmet is really where the money is here. It looks so good in, again, this kind of soft yellow, same yellow that we saw on the Luke Skywalker figure. Looks real sharp, has a very nice print with tons of detail, just kind of everything you could ask for there. The John Vander, or Gold Leader minifigure here, also looks really cool. He is the exact same as Red Leader, except the helmet is different, so he's got the white helmet with a bit of a different print that also looks really cool, very detailed and accurate to what we see in the movie. So I quite like what they have going on for these Rebel pilots, although I feel like having the exact same faces is a bit cheap and lazy, but when it's Rebel pilots, you know, I don't really care that much, but just so you know, they are the same. A Chewbacca minifigure is also included, and he's the same we've seen for the better part of a decade. A good figure, but nothing unique here. Here we have the same very good R2-D2 and C-3PO that we saw in the Death Star trash compactor last year, and while these figures are very good, the C-3PO doesn't have the dual mold leg that we see in the UCS Luke's Landspeeder, so it's not the best version of C-3PO you can get, but it's still a very good version. R2-BHD here looks odd because his torso is a different color than the rest of him, and if you look at the source material, that just doesn't seem to be the case, so I don't really know why they can't just use the same color torso and put the print on there. They also skimped out on giving him a back print compared to the R2-D2, and comparing him to the 2018 version of himself, which is sneaky expensive by the way, about a $60 astromech droid. You can see the difference. It just looked better in 2018, and for seemingly no reason they've made it look worse. The Rebel Fleet Trooper comes with a large spear and a handheld binocular accessory, which looks awesome. I'm quite sad that only one of these guys is included in the set, and it definitely could have used some dual molded legs. This classic look with regular gray legs is fine, but it's been 15 years since the first version of this figure, and it feels like it's received very minimal upgrades. Finally, we have a Rebel crew member, which if you look in the film, the helmet is kind of a flat white, so I think like they put the black piece on the Rebel Fleet Trooper. If they'd put a white visor piece in this helmet, it would look a lot less awkward. I'm just not a fan of Rebel Fleet helmets with no visor in them, so I don't really know why they didn't do that here, but that's the Rebel crew member, pretty forgettable figure in this set. Now to the Yavin IV Rebel base build. It's something that resembles Darth Vader's castle from 2019. However, because of the lower age rating, the build is quite simplified, and I've noticed quite a few people saying they don't love that. And we'll start with the part of the build that was probably hit the hardest by that lower age rating. The tree can be easily removed from the the Yavin model if you don't want it attached, or if, of course, you're a kid that wants to play with it. This genuinely looks like something that came from a 4+ LEGO Star Wars set. It's just so simplistic. It does avoid being blocky, though, so I will give it that. At least is rounded, but, you know, it doesn't have any extra detail. Like, it's so simple compared to what we could have had, and the backside is completely open, and the inside of the tree, of course, is hollow, which is for good reason, because you have a function with the guard watchtower. You can have your Rebel Fleet Trooper stand inside, and it's kind of crazy to me that this is the first representation of this in LEGO Star Wars ever after 25 years. And of course, you can raise and lower the whole thing. The function actually reminds me of the crow's nest on the 2005 Turbo Tank. The way that that kind of snapped into place is a very similar system to how this snaps into place. So while I really like the crow's nest and its functionality to raise and lower, I think the tree looks just too bad. The next section of the base we'll look at is the briefing room, and it's a fun one. Here we've got a large board, and it's showing the hole in the Death Star there. It is a sticker on that big Lego tile, but it does look very good nonetheless. And on the back side of that board is a very nice Rebel logo. You'll also find some water and a coffee mug in the room, a random panel on the wall showing off even more detail. And finally, we have the 3 seats. Of course, General Dodonna will stand at the front of the classroom, and now that I put a minifig in there, it makes the whole room look quite a bit smaller, but we can have him briefing a couple of our Rebel pilots, and it looks kind of cool. Like I said, though, the room does get pretty small pretty fast when you add in characters. I guess it's also worth noting, if you really need to, you can get a little bit more space by opening the wall up, but like, it just makes it look awkward, honestly. Now, just outside that briefing room, we have a ladder, which I kind of like. Kind of makes the set feel like it's easy to move from one level to another, at least for kids trying to use their imagination. You have a big open space underneath that they literally did nothing with, which is a bit disappointing. On the inside, though, there is a panel showing off a Y-Wing, which is an included ship in this set that we'll get to later. And then at the front, like I mentioned, you can open these panels, and here we have a kind of armory with a blaster. On the opposite end, we have kind of a control room, which has some nice sticker detailing. However, it just feels considerably more empty than what we saw on the other side of Yavin with the briefing room. There's just a lot more stuff going on over there versus here. It just feels kind of empty. Same deal, though, on this side where you can open the panels, and inside of here, there's actually another couple of clips where you could put more blasters if you would like, and underneath here you'll just find some simple storage for some Rebel weaponry. Now, this middle section is where the stud shooters are, and there's also a crate, which interestingly enough is not placed on another one of these tile pieces with one singular stud. It's actually connected to all 4 studs, which makes it a little bit more difficult to take off, but it's also empty, so you could fill it with like some of that weaponry that we found or some of the characters' blasters, but either way, it's there if you want to use it. The outside part of this section on both ends uses translucent blue parts with a sticker that looks really cool. I suppose these are more intended to be outward facing into these different sections that the Rebels are milling about versus actually mattering for the stud shooter section, but yeah, they're still cool. The 2 stud shooters are actually connected and move in unison. You can see a nice control panel in the middle with what looks like a TIE fighter, and then looking from the outside of Yavin, you'll see the stud shooters just pointing out, and they're easy to access from the outside to be able to shoot off. The range of motion feels a little bit limited, much more so than it would be if they were freestanding, because then they could rotate 360 degrees. In this case, it definitely feels limited, so while the feature of them moving together is cool, the limitation is not, so kind of 50-50 there. Finally, we have the top section for the Yavin base, which is conveniently easy to remove and also conveniently easy to put back on. This section houses the ceremony room, and I think it's a particularly poor representation of that. I mean, I guess it's got the steps and some leaves in the background. What more could you want? The back of the box shows off Luke and Han just on their own in there high-fiving, but it also shows the ability to fit 7 minifigures inside, so we're going to try that. So it looks like we can get R2, C-3PO, and Leia in the back row, and then we can place General Dodonna right in front of Leia, or maybe we should offset him. He looks a little awkward standing in front of her. They have Chewbacca here on the right. Yeah, there's surprisingly plenty of space for 7. You could probably fit 8 or 9 figures in there pretty easily. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh to this section. Now that it has characters in it, it does look a little bit less bland to me. Maybe taking out General Dodonna there and R2 and C-3PO might make it look a little bit more natural as far as the spacing goes, but still, I think having characters in there adds a lot of life, to say the least. Now, on the very top section, you have this radar dish built in, which is cool, although I think I would have preferred something else. It's oddly placed in too, where it's easy to take out. It's not actually connected to anything. thing in there. It's one of the weirdest parts to a Lego Star Wars build I think I've seen. Like, that's just seems very abnormal for a set to do, but I guess they wanted something else on this top section and to not have a like 20-foot tall ceiling, so they threw that up there, even though it literally doesn't connect anything. Super weird. And lastly, before the Y-Wing, I want to talk about the exterior of this Yavin base. I think they do a decent enough job with the dark tan color and using enough shrubbery, like leaf pieces, to make it look like it's in the jungle. Like, it looks cool enough to me. Like, I definitely think the lower age rating does make it look dumbed down, and I think everyone that's made that assessment is right there, especially that's like why I have the tree off, because it looks a lot better without the tree. The tree really like makes you remember, oh yeah, this is not that great. But when you take the tree away, you kind of forget. And so if you're going to display this, displaying it without the tree is probably the way to go, because this actually looks pretty dang good like this. But maybe it's a bit small for some people for 170 bucks for like a giant Rebel base. Now, making use of the giant hangar bay, of course, is the Y-Wing Starfighter that they included in the set. A great surprise that I want to take a closer look at. So not only do we have the included Y-Wing build, small but still fits nicely in scale with this set, we have the stairs to walk into the cockpit for the Y-Wing. We also have a couple of ground lights for the Rebel crew member to kind of point the Y-Wing through, and then we also have the crew cart. Starting at the Y-Wing's cockpit, the shaping of it is really good for the scale. This is something that in 2012 they introduced a Y-Wing at this shape cockpit, and it looked awesome. It was much larger, but seeing it this small is kind of crazy. You have the steps for your Y-Wing pilot to step up and into the cockpit with. Unfortunately, it's not on a hinge, so you do have to pull the cockpit piece off, but then you can place your pilot in very easily, like so, lay him pretty far back because of how shallow the cockpit is, and then place that on top. He'll be able to sit in there just fine. Now, inside of that cockpit is a very fancy viewfinding piece that shows them inside of the Death Star trench. Gotta love that. Now, the front end of the Y-Wing has a couple of blasters. The underside of it doesn't really have anything going on other than some landing gear, and then instead of more landing gear, they have a clear piece in the middle because the normal landing gear is kind of the 3-point thing. The clear piece is just to hold that middle section up because it's probably just not strong enough at this scale. Unfortunately, you have the rotating turret on top of the Y-Wing. One of my favorite aspects of the Y-Wing from the original Star Wars Battlefront games, because you could switch into it and shoot at people behind you. Now, the most obvious downside of this Y-Wing are the giant spring-loaded shooters that they placed on top of the body of the Y-Wing. They work. You can shoot them. No, well, I held that one down. That was my bad. There you go. See, shoots easily. And you can remove them if you don't want them on there. I'm a Lego purist, so anything I buy has to stay as it came, so they'll stay on there for me. But you can see the look of it is vastly improved, much sleeker without them on there, certainly, and you can maybe add another piece there to cover it up. So not too bad all in all, just a little bit of an eyesore when they are on there. You do also have the option to place your astromech in the back here. He doesn't have the like jumper plate at the bottom, so he does connect to all the studs down there. It makes him a little tough to get out, but still simple enough to place in and looks decent for the scale. From the back end, the Y-Wing looks pretty good too. They did a killer job with these engines, and you can see some translucent yellow pieces being used to represent the thrust coming out of the back end, although I think I prefer like some pink in there with some earlier Lego Y-Wing sets. Pink always works. Anyway, the Y-Wing in this set was a genuine surprise. The rumors called for a microfighter Y-Wing to be included in this set, so seeing such a larger Y-Wing compared to the microfighters, of course, this is much smaller than any play-scale Y-Wing Lego has otherwise released, but yeah, still very cool. One of my favorite vehicles in Star Wars, just done differently for Lego Star Wars, so that makes me happy. The crew cart cannot go unappreciated here either. It is really good. It's, I mean, probably, I want to say the most accurate, best part of the set. You know, the Y-Wing is good, but it's small. The Yavin base is good, but it's maybe a year too low on the age rating. But man, this thing is in the right color. It seems like it's the right size with all the right proportions. You got little brake lights on the back. That's cute. You can take your Rebel crew member, place them in the front there, holding on to the antenna pieces or the control sticks, whatever. Looks great like that. You could place cargo on top, but that's not what's included because in the movie, they actually have minifigures, like, or people in the movie, not minifigures, riding on top of the cart here. And they even show Leia, but Leia obviously doesn't have legs, so she doesn't really make a lot of sense. We'll throw Han Solo on the other side. But, you know, they fit on perfectly. That's what they made this for. You have all of those studs there just so that minifigs can sit on top of this, and that's awesome, but we're going to need to get them out of the way because it also has storage inside, so you can throw a wrench in there, throw some blasters in there, like actually a very large storage space. You could fit probably quite a bit more in there. Neat surprise, because it's not something I had paid much attention to before like building the set, so when I built it and it was there, I was like, that's nice. When it comes down to it, I can see a lot of people wanting to pass on this set because of its very high price tag. $170 is not a cheap Lego set. It's the highest end of high-end Lego Star Wars play sets, and seeing them do an 8+ set like this for $170 was very surprising, but I do hope the concept stays alive. I'd love to see a battle on Hoth or a battle on Kashyyyk in this format at this price tag for Lego Star Wars. There's so many endless possibilities, so from that point of view, I hope this set does good. I also think it's generally a pretty okay set. I think it could have really benefited from going for a 1 year older age range. I mean, you look at Darth Vader's castle, which is a 9+ set. This is an 8+ set, and there's a pretty distinct drop off there. But maybe Darth Vader's castle is just cooler than Yavin 4, and no matter what, Yavin 4 was going to look lamer. I think I have to give this one an 8 out of 10. It's pretty deserving of that. It definitely has some flaws. It's not a perfect Lego Star Wars playset or display set, and in that vein, it's probably not even that great for display unless you remove that tree. You gotta remove the tree. You gotta call some tree cutters to cut it down. Whatever you gotta do, get that tree out of there.